This is Algebra 1's second lesson, Chapter 2.3. Yesterday we went over Chapter 2.2, which was all about adding negatives, like these examples here, 5 added to negative 3, or 9 added to negative 6. Tonight we're going to learn that these examples could also be rewritten this way. So 5 added to negative 3 is the same thing as 5 minus 3. And 9 added to negative 6 is the same thing as 9 minus 6. And notice that you get the same answer either way. You get 2 for both of these, and you get 3 for both of those. This is all part of a general rule, which is that adding negatives is the same thing as subtracting. In fact, there's an official rule, speaking of rule, for this. I took this straight out of the textbook, the subtraction rule. Now they've rewritten it in the opposite order, but what I said was that adding a negative is the same as subtracting. So the example they gave here, adding a negative, 3 added to negative 5, is the same as 3 minus 5. Now at this point you might ask, why did we have to learn yesterday how to add negatives if you were going to tell us that we could have been just subtracting all along? Well, tonight I'm going to explain that. Be patient, give me a couple of minutes, and I'll get to that explanation soon. But first I want to walk you through a couple of sample problems just to make sure you understand how to change from subtraction to adding a negative. So remember, minus 5 is the same as plus negative 5. So here, the sample problem is negative 4 minus 3. But I'm going to change that minus 3 to plus negative 3. And negative 4 plus negative 3, if you think of this as points, I've got 4 negative points, and I get another 3 negative points. Together, that makes 7 negative points, or negative 7. Similarly, 10 minus 11. I change that minus 11 to plus negative 11. And 10 positives plus 11 negatives together make 1 negative. Last example here, 11 minus 10. That minus 10 gets changed to plus negative 10. And 11 plus negative 10 is 1. Now on this last example here, 11 minus 10, you know that 11 minus 10 is 1. You didn't need to go through this step. You already knew how to go straight from 11 minus 10 to 1 without changing minus 10 to plus negative 10. But I want to make an important point here. Remember that commutative property that we talked about yesterday? The commutative property said it didn't matter whether I was doing a plus b or b plus a, I'd get the same thing. Well, let's go back to this problem that we were just talking about, this one down here, 11 minus 10. Let's look at it a little more closely. 11 minus 10 is the same as 11 plus negative 10. That commutative property says that I can rearrange this order, right? Grab hold there. Sorry, this is a little clumsy to work with, but negative 10 plus 11, that's 1. But if I tried to rearrange the order here, 10 minus 11, that's not 1. It doesn't work any longer. In fact, this isn't the only case. Let's look at the previous example. B, 10 minus 11. If I rearrange the order here, no problem. Negative 11 plus 10, that is negative 1. But what happens when I rearrange the order here? 11 minus 10 is not negative 1. And that gets us at a crucial point. The commutative property is only going to work for you when you're adding. Subtraction isn't commutative. So if I want to be able to reorder the numbers in a problem, I've got to make sure that I'm doing adding, not subtracting. Now, let me just say one thing off to the side here. Later, in a few lessons, we're going to talk about multiplication. You can also rearrange the order when you're multiplying, but for now we're just talking about adding and subtracting, and when it comes to those topics, you can only rearrange the order of the numbers in a problem if you're only adding. If there's any subtraction mixed in there, you can't do any rearranging of the order. In fact, let's look at one more example just to prove the point. This is that very first example that we talked about tonight. 5 plus negative 3 equals 2. It's the same thing as 5 minus 3, because that's also 2. But here I'm allowed to change the order. Negative 3 plus 5 is still 2. I can't do that order change here, though. 3 minus 5 is not, oops, wrong color, is not 2. If I want to be able to change the order of a problem, I've got to make sure that I'm only dealing with addition. Can't have any subtraction in there. Okay, I promised to explain why this mattered, why I'm teaching you how to add negatives. Well, later in the year, we're going to get to more and more complex problems. And there are going to be lots of times when it's going to be easier to solve the problem if I can just reorder the numbers that are in the problem. In those cases, I have to make sure that I'm just dealing with addition. Can't have any subtraction in there. In fact, we don't have to talk about later in the year. There's an example today in the textbook, example 2. This problem is a lot easier to solve if I'm able to reorder the numbers in this question. Before I go there, though, I want to zoom in on one other topic right here. This idea of minus minus. In fact, speaking of zooming in, 3 minus minus 4. Okay, let's zoom in on just that part, the 3 minus minus 4. Anytime you see, whoops, hit the wrong button there. Anytime you see minus minus, you can change that to plus. 2 minuses cancel each other out. That's the way to think of this. 2 minuses cancel each other out and become a plus sign. So from now on, when you see minus minus, just go ahead and draw a plus right on top of that. That becomes 3 plus 4, or in other words, 7. All right, let's go back to the problem then. Here it is, that 3 minus minus 4. I'm going to change that to plus. And as you'll see, that's exactly what they did in the textbook. They turned it into 3 plus 4 minus 2 plus 8. Now, in order to solve this problem, what I'd like to be able to do is put all the positives next to each other at the front, like I did yesterday in lesson 2.2. But I can't do that. I just said you can't do that unless everything's addition. I've got subtraction going on right here. So I've got to change that minus 2. Change it to plus negative 2. Now, everything is plus. Now, there is a negative in here, that's okay, but I'm not doing any subtraction. All the actions are additions. So now I can move things around, and that's exactly what I'd like to do. I'm going to put all the positives next to each other, and I'll leave the negative off by itself on the right. And now I can do my work. Solve this problem. 3 plus 4 plus 8. Give you a second to think about that. 3 plus 4 plus 8 becomes 15. So I've got 15 plus negative 2. And you can solve that the way that we did yesterday. Or you can use the subtraction rule that I talked about today. 15 plus negative 2 is the same thing as 15 minus 2. And what we end up with for an answer is 13. Okay, that's as far as I need to take you today in the lesson. At this point, you're ready for the homework. So I'm going to go ahead and show you the homework here. Now, if you want, you can copy it all down, or if you're able to, I don't know how this would work for you on your computer, but you probably ought to be able to pause the video right here, and maybe you can print this screen so that you don't have to do the writing. But one way or the other, I need you to answer all 12 of these questions. Like yesterday, I didn't start with number 1. I just picked some problems out of a book that I thought were appropriate for you guys. But I want you to solve and show me the work for all 12 of these. Don't just show me the answers, but show me the work. And that's your homework for tonight. Now, if today's or tonight's explanation worked for you so that you feel ready to do the homework, great. And I hope that is the case. But if yesterday you felt like things made more sense when we were talking about using coins and canceling coins, well, the textbook uses that same idea with subtraction. So if you want, you can continue to listen to the video, and I will explain how to use that coin concept with subtraction. But if you feel like you've got everything straight, you can go ahead and stop the video here. All right, let's use an example here for working with coins in subtraction. -6 minus -2. Okay. In the coin concept, I'm starting with -6, which means I'm starting with 6 negatives. And then I'm going to subtract 2 of the negatives. I'm going to literally take 2 of the negatives away. Well, how do I do that? Just like it sounds. I'm going to take 2 of the negatives away. In fact, you might remember back in elementary school when you first learned about subtraction, your teacher might have referred to it as take away 2 instead of subtract 2. Well, that's what I just did. I took away 2. So what do I have left here? Not -6 any longer, but -4. And that is the answer. -6 minus -2 is -4. If this started making more sense to you than the earlier explanation in the lesson, then I'll go on to another example. This is a little more challenging though. 3 minus 6. Well, like before, I'm starting here with this 3. In this case, it's a +3, so I've got 3 pluses, 3 positive points. And I'm going to subtract 6. And how am I going to do that? I'm literally going to take 6 positives away. Well, wait a minute. How can I take 6 positives away when I only have 3 positives? In this case, the textbook introduces an interesting concept. I only have 3 positives and I need more because I got to take more away. So what they use is this idea of a pair. A plus and a minus matched together add up to nothing. So I haven't really changed my situation. I've added 1, 2, 3 nothings to what I already had. But if I get rid of these oval shapes, now it looks like this. I've got 6 positives and 3 negatives. Well, remember, what I'm supposed to do is take away 6 positives. If I do that, take away those 6 positives, what I'm left with down here is the 3 negatives, or -3. And -3 is your answer. Okay, I don't know which of the two ways of approaching this is going to have made more sense to you. The first part of the lesson before I showed you the homework, or these last 2 slides after I showed you the homework. But one way or the other, I want you to go ahead and solve the 12 problems and bring that in to me tomorrow.